Conscious Creative from MuseWorks Audio. The Conscious Creative is a podcast featuring interviews with artists who are doing transformational work in their craft and in their communities. Join us as we discuss different artistic philosophies, give you brand new tools to bring back to your creative spaces, and build a community of artists dedicated to deepening their relationship with their craft. I'm your host, Mike Irish. Thank you for joining us. Carter Lee is a bassist, educator, and producer. He's originally from Edmonton, Canada, and now resides in LA. Carter works as a mentor with the online education service Soundfly, as well as running a podcast entitled Themes and Variations. In this conversation, Carter and I talked about his beginnings as an artist in Edmonton, his time in Berklee, a little bit about his time in New York, as well as his podcast called Themes and Variations, which is a podcast which he described as you're sitting on a tour bus listening to a bunch of musicians just chat about different music and how it's affected them and how they listen to it and consider it. I think it's a really cool podcast. We also talked about having balance in your life as an artist, as well as his mentorship through his nonprofits and through Soundfly. I really enjoyed this conversation. Carter's a really good guy, and the stuff they have on Soundfly is really interesting and I think worth checking out. Now, I want to mention that I have a contest going right now on museworksaudio.com/contest-entry. I'm offering a free mix and master of a 3-track EP or 3 singles. So go to www.museworksaudio.com/contest-entry. And I look forward to seeing all the entries. I've had quite a few come in already, and I've had some really nice conversations with some of the artists. Some really talented artists have come through, so I'm really excited about that. And without any further ado, let's get into the conversation with Carter Lee. Welcome, Carter Lee, to the Conscious Creative. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know that things are a little bit crazy right now, so yeah, I'm stoked to just have a chat and hear more about who you are and what you do.
Mike, thanks so much for having me. I am loving what you're doing with the pod. You fired it up maybe beginning of last month, right? October, maybe?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Fantastic idea. I love the guests you've had, and just to be able to join that crew of guests, I'm really excited. Yeah, awesome. Things are pretty crazy right now, but this will be a nice little respite from everything going on.
Yeah, hopefully we can change of topics, change our what we've been thinking about for the past few days.
Yep.
So you grew up in Edmonton, and that's a city I'm somewhat familiar with. I used to travel there for sports when I was younger and stuff like that. So I know a little bit about Edmonton. What was it like growing up as an artist there? And was there a scene? Did you have bands or?
Yeah, I should, for anybody from Edmonton. So I say I'm from Edmonton when I live in the U.S., obviously, because people don't know where Sherwood Park, Alberta is from. So I am from Sherwood Park. Okay. And that's just for my Canadian friends out there that are like, he's not technically from Edmonton. But I mean, obviously, it's right on the border. So I'm technically from Sherwood Park. But Edmonton, man, such an amazing place to grow up. I think not just in the arts, but I think like so many things. Growing up there, I think I took a lot of it for granted, at least until I got into music and discovered like there is an incredible scene there. I got really into jazz after high school, and I started studying at Grant MacEwan University, which again, what a gem, a hidden gem almost of a music program there. It is absolutely incredible. I think back to so many of my like formative musical experiences or things that had such a massive impact on me as a musician were during my 2 years at MacEwan. So, but yeah, I had bands. I had bands in high school that never played a show, never even really came close to playing shows, but I was really into metal then as I started playing bass when I was like 16 or so, and when music started to become a much bigger part of my life, and I got into fusion a little bit and jazz and kind of was going on there. And then of course McEwen like really drilled that into me that this was a really important style to learn if you wanted to just progress as a player, performer, or as a composer, or anything you wanted to do. And yeah, I mean the jazz scene there, the jazz festival there was absolutely incredible. I am not as plugged in to what's going on in Edmonton now. I have a lot of friends certainly that maybe moved to Toronto, or like myself to the US, and some even to New York and stuff. So a lot of us are not living there anymore, but I got to assume it's still strong, certainly at least compared to maybe other cities, because just a remarkable art scene for sure.
Cool. Yeah. I know an artist, Cadence Weapon. I don't know him personally, but he's a hip hop artist out of Edmonton he's really incredible as well. Actually,
I didn't realize until like much later after I left and I got into hip hop that like, oh yeah, there is a fantastic hip hop scene. That people like to cite the bigger, like Mac DeMarco's from Edmonton. Cool. Maybe he's from Montreal, maybe Vancouver. I mean, I like to say Edmonton because I'm from Edmonton too, but, there are just some like Megan James from Purity Ring. We actually went to the same high school, in Sherwood Park, and, she was a year older than me, but Purity Ring has gone on to do incredible things. But, there are some amazing musicians that come out of Edmonton and maybe leave, and then some that stay because it is really great. It's a really great place to, I think, work and earn a living in music. And I mean, obviously, pandemic aside, this is like pre-pandemic times. But it's a fantastic place if you want to be an artist, I think.
Cool. And then you moved from Edmonton to New York right after.
I moved to Boston first, so I got my diploma at McEwen. I took a year off, and then I got into Berklee and then deferred. So Berklee College of Music in Boston, and I went and finished my degree there. I stayed in Boston for a year. My then girlfriend, now wife, was just finishing up her degree, so I stuck around Boston for a year and played and gigged and did all that stuff. And then I moved to New York there for 3 years, and then in 2015 moved to Los Angeles. So that's a lot. And now I'm like leaving LA pretty much. So I feel like I'm like, I mean, there's a very good chance that we end up coming back after things are a lot cooler, social health wise and everything like that. But it's when I'm looking back on it, it's like, man, I can't seem to sit still in one place for too long. It's just kind of crazy,
man.
but.
I'm the same way. I grew up in the Yukon. I lived in Victoria, Vancouver, lived in Melbourne for a year as well. So I've been around the world for the past decade as well.
It's funny. I had the realization, like the way that I think of, when we first met and you mentioned you're from the Yukon, I had a similar reaction to, like, I think when people in the U.S. hear I'm from Canada, and like just the way they think about Edmonton, the way I think about Yukon, it's like, man, it's like in the summer, isn't the sun up like the entire day? Like, what's it like up there? It's crazy. I have a friend, really close friend of mine that's living there now, and he absolutely loves it. Like it just sounds absolutely incredible. So man, I have to get up there one day.
Kind of similar thing, I think, for myself is I didn't appreciate it when I was growing up there. But having said that, the winters are so long and dark that I don't think I can ever live up there ever again.
I'm trying to think of like anybody that stayed, at least in our generation. I can't think of any, I mean, very rare friends that stayed where we grew up. It's just not the thing. Even my parents didn't, they grew up on farms and stuff, and then moved to cities, and it just seems like that is a natural progression that. And then you maybe start to think like, oh, I actually had it really good where I was growing up.
So you mentioned that you're living in LA now, and you're working on a podcast called Themes and Variations. I know that there's a few other things that you're working on as well, but I really like the pod, and I think it's great for people who just want to it's kind of like hanging out with musicians, and I don't live in a city. I don't hang out with a lot of musicians. So it's pretty cool to just be able to plug in and just listen to musicians talk shop. And I think it can be a good way for people to learn about music and the way that people think. But I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about the pod and what you're doing with it.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much. That's kind of the exact vibe that we're hoping to achieve with it. So I work for Soundfly, a music education company, and part of my role at Soundfly is to manage the podcast. Now, like we thought forever about trying to do a podcast. I remember even my first day, we were like, but we just could never find the right kind of theme or idea for it. And as you know, doing a podcast, it's a lot of work. And I think that if you don't, anything that you do, be it music or anything creative, like if you don't truly enjoy the angle that you're approaching it from, like it's just a huge slog, and it's just not worth it because it's so much time. But yeah, no, as far as themes goes, I mean, the idea came from Mahea to just kind of have every episode center around a very general theme in music. Our first episode was songs from the first album you ever bought. Our most recent was a Halloween themed one, just spooky songs. We dug into some scary songs, stuff like that. So that's kind of the general thing. We get a couple guests together. It's usually myself and one guest in Mahea, or another Soundfly team member, and a guest, or me and two guys. Like I'm typically hosting it with a variety of guests, and it's just about getting a different perspective in music. Like that same theme has generated so many different songs for each episode. Like for instance, my favorite and most relatable theme so far was our first, and songs from the first album I ever bought. Can you remember maybe the first album that you ever bought, Mike, with your own money? So that's not like maybe you're in the record store and your parents bought something for you. Doesn't count. It's got to be something that maybe you spent your own hard-earned cash or allowance on. And it's very telling. You get a sense of like where somebody's taste maybe originated. Mine was Green Day. It was Dookie. Okay. So I broke down Brain Stew from Dookie. Mahea's was a Ben Folds record, which was like way later than I expected anybody her age to have picked up. And then Marty, our other guest and coworker, was a Daft Punk record. So some solid guests. But can you think of yours?
I think like I had some. I think my sister did some dubs of like Eminem and some like Big Shiny Tunes and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think the first one I ever bought is actually kind of weird, but I think it was an Exhibit record.
Nice. Yeah.
And like I still love Exhibit. I think he's so underrated, and like Alcoholic is just such a jam. So, and I still to this day love like I love the West Coast sound and everything. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Dre's production obviously is just, of the highest degree. So I think I can't remember which album it was. And I can't really remember any specific songs off of it, but I know that like, I think it was the one after the album that had Alcoholic on it. But after I bought that album, I went back and listened to some of his earlier work, and that really like blew my mind and imprinted when I was very young as well.
Yeah. You just took me down memory. Like Big Shiny Tunes was responsible. I mean, I didn't have the first one, but the second Big Shiny Tunes 2, you had Marilyn Manson on it. You had Blur song 2, the Chemical Brothers were on it. Like that, I played that record out like crazy. Like that was in the dressing room in hockey for sure. Like that record was playing. And so I was in grade 7 when Chronic 2001 came out, and then Slim Shady LP. So Eminem was and I was right there with you. And I think I was even like listening to Limp Bizkit. That's a little more embarrassing. And I had like the backwards Yankee hat and stuff too, just like Fred Durst. But that and Exhibit's feature on, I can't remember, I think he's on What's the Difference. I know Eminem is on What's the Difference, but I think Exhibit, he also features on Chronic, and that's where I like heard him and was like, oh my God. But then he went off and did obviously like the Pimp My Ride thing too. And like, so he became kind of a meme of himself.
Totally.
I'm right there with you. Like underrated MC for sure.
Totally. I think the first Big Shiny Tunes I got was 6, and I think it had Forgot About Dre on it, and I know that I played.
Of course. Nowadays, everybody want to talk when they got something to say. If another comes out, and like I used to listen to that video nonstop, and I had it imprinted. So you must be. So I was born in '87, so I'm guessing you're maybe just a touch touch younger than I am.
Yeah, I'm 91.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a couple. That's exactly like your first record being Eminem or Exhibit, obviously, or maybe Dre. Like those are all fantastic choices. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, and you're right. It totally has informed my taste over the years as well. Like I've definitely expanded, and it's pretty eclectic, but from the beginning, yeah. And I find it interesting as well, like what Eminem spoke to, and just like the way that he blew up. And like I wasn't an angry kid, I didn't think, but then when I listened to Eminem, I was like, I understand what this guy is talking about.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I wish I understood, I think, what he was talking about more, because I listened to music, and even to this day, I'm not enough of a focus. I don't put enough focus on lyrics. I'm a producer, I'm a composer, and a bass player first. And then when it comes time to like write some lyrics, I'm like, oh God, this is so tough. And I think it like where that first kind of hit home. I remember again being in grade 7 and writing out lyrics to an Eminem song on just a sheet of paper that I'd memorized all the words because I listened to the record so much. I had no idea really. Like I knew there were some horrible words in there, but I didn't know exactly what he was getting at and saying. And I had a teacher like find what I had written down, and that did not go very well. I remember
Man.
So yeah, you got to be careful. And I think that should have shown me in the moment to take words far more seriously in music. But it took me a long time for that to actually be the case. But it's funny you mentioned because I'll hear the production. I think even at that age, like I was really into guitar. So if there's like an Eminem would incorporate some like really even like loud guitars sometimes in his beats. So that would grab me. And then the words I would sing and not totally know what I was saying. So got to be careful.
It's so interesting. I wonder what that is because I'm, especially when I was younger, like I do some mixing now. Mm-hmm. So I can hear a lot more, but when I was younger, I would almost not even pay attention to the production. Like it was almost entirely lyricism.
Yeah, I know I said that. I don't think I could say I went deep on the production. It was probably just like that guitar is up front and in my face, and I love that, There was just if there was kind of a visceral sound, like I would latch onto that. Guitar solos I was a big fan of, like just flashy, and that getting into metal, obviously that became such a big thing, like any kind of technical music and stuff like that. So that was huge for me too. And wanted to play guitar, but my dad had a bass, so I begrudgingly started playing bass. And I don't think I ever thought about the bass before I started playing it. So I can't say that I was probably just thinking about the production as a kid. I was probably like, that sounds cool, like that. And that was the extent of my thoughts there, probably. Yeah.
I mean, I think when I started falling in love with lyricism, I wasn't really dissecting. I think I thought that the Eminem song was better by the amount of curse words that was in it. I was like, if this has more, like that's awesome, and that makes it a better song. So it's not like I was thinking too deeply about it either.
Yeah, I was probably right there with you.
So good. I mean, I think that's a good little example of sort of how those kind of conversations can go, just with that simple question, just the kind of diving in that
exactly
that can happen.
Not to bring it too much back to like what we're doing with themes, but like the thing that's been really cool is getting all these different guests. Like we just had Ari Stidham on, who's a really good friend of mine, but also a very accomplished actor here in LA. And we have an upcoming episode with Charlie Harding, who hosts Vox's Switched on Pop, and just a brilliant music journalist. And so that episode really, like, he turned the whole episode on me, and like it just blew my mind. So I'm very excited for that one. And Kirk Hamilton of Strong Songs will be on an episode coming out, another fantastic music podcast. So it's been good. I've been really fortunate to have a very full life in music to this point. So it's been really fun to reach back out to people that I've made music with or worked with or just like even just friends of friends, and have these kinds of discussions that we would have in the tour van, or we would have at venues, or we would have, sometimes even just at work. Like we talk about this stuff all the time. So just to be able to roll tape on it and have something that's hopefully, people can find entertaining. We do try to make it educational as well, of course, because that's what we're all about at Soundfly. But certainly understand that it has to be something that hopefully people will laugh at a little bit, maybe learn something, and we're still trying to find the sweet spot, like 6 or so episodes in, and I think we're starting to get there. It'll take a while, but of course, I think we're starting to get there for sure.
Yeah. I love that the idea of it just essentially being tour bus conversations that have been recorded.
Yeah, definitely.
And you guys have like read-alongs as well that to accompany the
Mahia makes this free companion course that anybody can find on soundfly.com. There's a lot like every week, every Monday and Tuesday here before an episode comes out, because we release every second Wednesday. Monday and Tuesday at our house they're pretty long days for sure. Like she's working on the course, I'm working on the edit. I do an article to accompany everything. We do a community playlist on Spotify where people can add songs related to that theme, because we want to hear what other people are listening to. So it's a blast. Like we try to make, again, everything we do is so steeped in community and those experiences, like whether you're working with a mentor, like we do provide, or you're just being supported by other people. Like that's so important that you're getting advice from like-minded individuals. But yeah, the companion course is awesome. It dives deep into everything really kind of mentioned on an episode, and can give you like some creative prompts. And if you're just trying to learn a little bit more for free on the fly, it's really, really cool little project that we're doing over here.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. I definitely want to start incorporating more of community into what I'm doing. But I love all that, and I mean I'm sure it's so much work. So I commend you guys for doing that.
Through doing this pod, like it's not like the booking of guests, the research that goes into it, the editing, the recording, like everything, like. Yeah, it's a lot, but it's it's cliche, but it's a labor of love for sure.
Yeah,
it's been a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, it's really, really rewarding. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is definitely a bit of a change of subject, and I've been told that you can go on at length about golf if you're allowed to. And I heard you're pretty obsessed with golf, and I'm pretty obsessed with soccer. I just picked it up after like 10 years of not playing, and I've just like dove into it. And I read this in I think maybe a Tim Ferriss blog or something. He was talking about lots of his friends will be writing, and they're writing a book, and then they get stuck in like the middle where they're really struggling, and it's all they have is the book. So it's really hard for them to pull themselves out of it, because that's all they have. And I think it's so important as creatives to have a separate outlet, whether it's like soccer or golf or like community events or just even like little crafty things. And I'd love to hear about how golf has like affected your creative process, and also what it provides, like what kind of value it provides in your life.
Oh man. Thank you for the platform to talk about golf. I'm going to try and, keep it not as succinct as possible, but like, yeah, I think Jeremy probably told you that, and Jeremy's right. I do love the game. It's funny, like you mentioned, you took, like, it was about 10 years for you with soccer. Same deal for me. Like it was, my dad had me on skates in the winter when I was 3, and on the golf course that same year at 3 years old. And he played the game. It got me into it. I played growing up. I played tournaments and everything growing up. There was a career path, not to be a touring professional, but there was a path I was kind of chasing towards the end of my time in high school. And then music took over. And it was about 10 years. I would still kind of play a little bit here and there. It was still a really good connection to family for me. And living in another country, I think it was important to have kind of that. So if I would go home or my dad would visit, my mom plays a little bit too. And my little brother, we would have that we could like still bond over. So creatively, what it does for me, I think, like, one, I think what got me back into the game after so long was in 2018. I was touring a lot. I was on the road like 120 days that year, I think, and it was all over the U.S., all over the world. And then coming back home, I was like, pretty wound up. And touring can be definitely, obviously, pretty stressful. It's a blast, but there are stressful parts to it for sure. And just getting out and playing by myself, going for a walk, and just kind of thinking about something else was really good for me, and really allowed me to decompress after being on the road for so long. I also think, at work, I'm in front of a screen all the time. That's not news. Like, everybody is in front of their screens all the time. When I'm at home, I'm in front of my phone way too much. When I'm on the golf course, I don't even have any ounce of an urge to look at my phone or do anything. So for that 4.5 hours, I'm just in that world. But then in between shots, you have that time, and my mind will wander. And sometimes I'll listen to records when I'm playing, or practicing, and then I'll, on the drive home, be like, maybe have an idea kind of inspired from that, and I'll go home and work on it. So creatively, it just, exactly like you were saying with the Tim Ferriss example, it just allows me to step away. Like, music is my hobby. It's still a career for me. But when it was just purely my career and my hobby, I did enjoy just making tracks and trying different things. And it was a release, and it still is a release for me and an escape. But it just, if you get stuck, you feel like kind of trapped in a box almost. Like, getting out of a creative block by just making more music doesn't work for me. So finding something else. So what was the second part of your question? So I think I got the creative side of it down, but just kind of what it means to me, I guess. Or I want to make sure I get that part too.
I think you kind of answered it. The second part was what value it provides, and I think you answered that. I mean, I have the same way. Like, that's one of my biggest struggles right now is my phone, and managing my use of my phone. And it's pretty incredible when I'm out playing soccer that there's just like, it doesn't even cross my mind.
Exactly. Like, you are so focused on the task at hand, particularly in like a reactive sport like soccer, that you can't even, like, especially now, like, there's a lot of doom scrolling going on. Like, what's going on with the news? It's November 6th today. I'm seeing what's going on with the election and everything. And just check, you got to scroll. Like, what are the updates? It's like, dude, like, that stuff will take care of itself. Put the phone down, do some work or whatever. But like on the course or the pitch, as they say, I guess in soccer, you're not thinking of that. And it's just something I look forward to every weekend for the most part. And it's just a really, really good release for sure.
Yeah. There's quite a few parallels in there with myself. And when you said you were looking at a career, were you thinking like sort of golf coaching or something like that?
I don't know that I had gotten that far. I worked at a club. Like, my first job was working at the club that I grew up at and playing at and stuff. And I saw the head pros there. I was like, I could maybe do that. And I just remember Al, the pro at the time, taking me aside. He's like, if you want to play, do not be a head pro, because you won't play. You just like book people's tee times. And he was very real with me, and I've been really lucky to have that along my life, both in music and other things. Just like people being like, hey, like, this is the actual information that I'm about to give you. So I was planning on going to college in Nebraska to play some golf and be on the team, and not a big school or anything, but that was the plan. And the music just took over, which I have no regrets there, of course. But it was a cursory thing, mainly because I was really bad at everything in school. I was okay in like English, and then everything else I just did not try enough in school, and that's probably a regret to a degree. But because of that, I was able to find, I was like, oh, okay, I'm good at music and I'll do that, or I'm good at golf and I'll do that. I'll find something, Yeah, I quit things that I'm not good at very quickly. That's basically what happens.
That's a skill in and of itself. You kind of mentioned that you had some mentors steer you in the right direction.
Yep.
And I know that you've mentored in a couple different aspects, I think, right? You have a nonprofit
I was the director of a nonprofit here in LA when I first I was an instructor first when I first moved out here. I was lucky enough to get the job when the program was just starting, became the director, and then I left that to do Soundfly and kind of some more mentorship. So my mentoring and our mentoring with Soundfly is really just about, you know, working with artists that maybe they want to work on compositional skills or the production skills, or maybe there's a totally blank slate. They just don't have anything together yet, but they know they want to make music. Then we work on pairing people with mentors that can help in those specific goals. Like I'm about to start a session myself with a young man that's working on just some production chops and stuff, and like getting his ideas out of the DAW and being a little bit more polished and things like that. So, you know, we do every musical concept you could possibly hope to work on. But yeah, I have had a lot of really amazing mentors in my life musically. At Grant McEwen, it goes back to that. But John Taylor, the head of the bass department, and Jim Head, the head of the guitar department. John, I wouldn't have the confidence to do anything musically, I think, without my 2 years of him really pushing me to get better. I couldn't read a note on the bass when I first got to playing at McEwen. And he put me in a lot of situations where I would fall on my face to start, and then kind of like they would kick my ass, really. Like I remember just not being able to play in the first ensembles I was in at all. But it really pushed me to get better, and he was there with me every step of the way. And then Jim, in the guitar department, I took one, like he wasn't my teacher. I had some classes with him, but I took one private lesson with him at the end of my time at McEwen, and he told me, you know, it's a long, like 2-hour lesson. We just kept talking. It was amazing that he gave me this much time, honestly. And I wasn't sure what to do with Berklee. I'd gotten in, but I just, like, I didn't know, like, am I ready to just go to school? And he told me to take a year off, and it's something that he did. He worked a construction job and practiced 8 hours a day. And I worked for my dad at a plastics warehouse and practiced 8 hours a day. I had a bass at work, and that whole year, like, I would kind of extend my lunch hour maybe a little bit longer than I should have, but just to practice and get better. And yeah, I don't know what would happen at Berklee if I didn't have that year of just constant practice. And I think that anything you want to do in the arts, anything, if you want to like turn your passion into a job, like there's all these, you see a lot of like, this is how I made $100,000 doing my passion. Like the thing is, you have to have at least, I think, a year. I think Patton Oswalt said something like this, but you have to have at least a year where you are completely obsessed, like completely obsessed. Like I had friends going on trips all over the world. They'd say like, that's the post high school thing to do. Like we're going to go to Australia, go to Thailand. Everybody's, you know, taking a cab from Sherwood Park to Edmonton to go to the bar. Like we're going to go to White Ave and like party. Nah, man, I'm going to practice my bass. And that's what I did every single day, every single night. And, yeah, I got tendonitis doing it, but you know, it was worth it. You have to be completely obsessed. I know. I think I just took us on a tangent there, no. Yeah,
I agree. Like you know, there's so much information out there telling people to chase their dreams and to follow their passions, and I absolutely believe it. But I feel like they overlook like. They're selling you the end point often, but not necessarily letting you know how difficult the middle part can be. Yeah,
you're like your friends, your family, even they won't see the work. They'll see the end result. They'll be like, "Oh man, your music is so much better now." Like what, or like not even better. Like whatever. It's just more polished now, right? It's like, well, nobody sees the 8 hours a day, or the 10, or the 12 hours a day, but it's essential, and that is the frustrating thing. Is like. Even the like savant musicians, like any musicians that I really looked up to, it wasn't because they were immediately gifted with the ability to play. Those do absolutely exist, but they were the ones that like really had to work at it and really had to work hard at it. And I think they appreciate where they got to a little bit more because they had to sacrifice things just to get better. One of my favorite, I'm going to butcher the quote probably, but I'm a huge Bill Evans fan, jazz pianist Bill Evans, and his quote was something to the effect of like he wasn't getting the gigs he maybe wanted, and it was like, you know what, if I lock myself in a room and just practice and practice and practice, eventually there will be a knock at the door. Eventually that opportunity will show up, and that's that's kind of how I approached that kind of work. It is dull. It is really boring to drill scales 2 hours a day and do that. And then also like there's a lot more fun stuff you can put into practice, but people aren't going to see that. They're going to see the end result, you on stage, and think that like you just kind of got there through some sheer luck. You know, there's no quick fix. There just isn't. And anybody selling you a quick fix is like, they don't have the answer. So yeah, not to get on a soapbox.
No.
Yeah.
And you kind of, you talked about the sort of the people that really had to work for it. And I think Kobe was talking about it, and he was like, I was never so like, obviously he was gifted to a degree, but he was never the most talented. Yep. And he was never the least talented. So if he wanted to be the best, he had to work his ass off for it. And I think that's like, I think you have to have some initial talent to drive yourself at the beginning. But yeah,
I mean, not to turn this into golf podcast, but Tiger Woods, everybody's like, oh, he could hit the ball when he was 3. It's like, that's great. But he worked extremely hard. I think to a fault. Like his dad was not a good dad. He was like definitely way too hard on him growing up. But like no, there is maybe some natural ability for sure, but that's useless without like the tireless work ethic. Like it just doesn't translate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just one last question before we wrap up. I'd love to know what impact you want to leave with your creations, whether it's mentorship or your own music, or is there anything that you really aim for with your work?
Man, that is a really, really powerful question. I'm trying to like, because when I think with mentorship, it's easy. It's just like seeing people get to make the kind of things that they want to make. Like that's it. I am so inspired by any student that we have that comes to Soundfly with a specific goal, or even just like a loose goal. And then you get to hear their music at the end of it and like where it is after just even like 4 weeks of working on it. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable to see that transformation and the kind of excitement. Like when we have a student that's maybe like, I was too shy to go out and perform because I didn't feel like my songs were that good. And then at the end, like I'm going to jams now and I'm playing like that. That's huge. As far as my own music, that it's tough for me to answer because I never sit down. Anything that I've played on, or I guess the stuff that I played on was probably more commercially geared. I guess the stuff that people might know my playing from was definitely like had an end game of like, we want to get a ton of streams and things like that, right? So, and if it's obviously with a major label, that's going to affect that as well, like the bottom line of what you want to do. But for me, when I'm not just playing, when I'm actually creating and maybe producing, composing, and have a little bit more of the creative hand in things, I never have a goal of this is what I want that track to do. I think honestly, that feeling, if anybody's getting a feeling that I get when I listen to some of my favorite tracks, like what I make is not going to be for everybody, but hopefully somebody is a like-minded listener and can listen to it and feel good about it, and feel maybe a little bit inspired. But, for me, there's no end game. I think when I think it's important, obviously, to have financial goals, in everything that you do, for sure. I think those are great benchmarks to set for yourself. But at the same time, for me, any success I've had in music, specifically, and not like teaching or anything like that, has come when I allowed those things to separate. I didn't have an attachment to my art for making money. And I think when you do have that, you're like, I need to, man, I spent X amount of dollars on this track, so I need to make that back. And everything. Like, yeah, that hopefully, yeah. And I think that you need to take and make really good decisions business wise to put yourself in a good situation for success in that. But attaching your livelihood to your art initially, I think is difficult to do, and it's difficult to get past that. It can turn into that, absolutely, and when it does, pursue that as much as you possibly can, because it's truly a gift for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I don't. It'd just be too tough for me. Like, I can't make art or music when it's like I'm thinking about what it's going to do commercially. So but yeah, you just hope that, like, honestly, short answer, I hope people can dig it. My best feelings in the world are coming off a stage and somebody, like, I'm the bass player, so not many people were saying like, yo, that was sick, man. Like, no, it was definitely focused on the singer, the group, and elsewhere. But for me, every now and again, there'd be like some dude coming up who's like, dude, I love that line that you played, and that was enough for me. That was great.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, that's the interview. I really appreciate your time and your answers. This was a really great interview.
Thanks so much for having me. I mean, I love what you're doing.
Thanks.
With the pod. I mean, what's going on with the future of the Conscious Creative? We got how many, like, I know it started in October, but how many episodes are you aiming for, and are you on a schedule with it?
I'm just doing them weekly is the goal.
Nice. That's awesome.
I think sort of the past couple of days, I'm really working to get my social media and stuff going. So I think I'm just going to do what I'm doing right now until 2022 is the plan, and see where I'm at.
I think you mentioned, even, I can't remember which episode it was, but that you look at goals like very long term. Like maybe you have some daily goals, but I know you're setting like 5 and 10 year goals. Like that is amazing. I'm super impressed by that.
Thanks,
like,
man.
I can't right now, particularly in this year, I forget what last week was, and I can't. I have certainly with work we have goals and a lot of goals, and those are the focal point. But like, I can't deal with my own personal goals. I really wanted to ask you, like, in doing a podcast, has it changed the way that you approached your creativity at all, or just like how you absorb art or anything like that? Because you're talking about it so much and diving into it. Has it affected just kind of your, like, as a listener, as a consumer of art, or the art that you're actually making, you're mixing and everything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think every conversation impacts us to some degree, you know? But I think the way that it's impacted me the most is I have been very introverted for a super long time, especially like the past 5 years. I kind of locked myself in a room and like learned how to make music and mix and stuff like that. And this has pulled me out to such a crazy degree and really pulled me out of my comfort zone. So yeah, I would say in that sense, it's impacted me more, is pushing me out of my comfort zone. And also I know that I'm going to be so much better at promoting my music when it comes out, because I am promoting myself every single week now, or promoting the podcast. So that, I would say that's like the main effect that I've noticed. But also, I mean, just having new ideas and having interesting conversations every single week is bound to at least shift the ship in some direction, you know?
Right. I mean, I'd love to do this again anytime, but I think it would be really interesting. Like, we're both fairly green on the podcast side, I think, of things. When you look at like other podcasters have been doing it forever, and like a year from now, like that same question, Absolutely. What are we both going to feel? Because I feel exact same with you. Definitely maybe lean more to the extroverted side of things, but the last like few years have probably gone maybe the other way, and so doing a podcast has definitely helped that for sure. And like you said, just having these different discussions with people, and like it's just a blast, man. Like it really is a lot of fun. You feel inspired. Like I'm gonna feel the world might be crumbling around us in the United States, and like democracy might not exist anymore in the country that's a beacon for that. I kid, of course. I think that we're going to be okay, and at the end of the day, we might have an example of what is good in this country for sure. But you know, I just think like having this kind of outlet, I'm going to feel good about the rest of my day, you know, like because we were able to chat, and I'm going to have a lot of energy and feel inspired to do stuff. So that's the way to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything you want to blast out to the audience about where they can reach you, or anything you want to let them know about? I mean, all Soundfly related stuff. I handle a lot of our socials, so you can find us on Instagram at Learn to Soundfly. The podcast Themes and Variation. Please check it out. Let us know what you think. Even if you hate it, definitely let us know. I can be reached for podcast purposes, podcast@soundfly.com. We always love hearing from people. If people are like, I'd love to be a guest, like more than interested, Mike, we got to have you on, of course, one of these days.
I would love to. I would love to.
But yeah, that's the gist. Soundfly.com for any kind of music related learning stuff that anybody's trying to do. Check it out. We have some new courses that I'm really excited about. We have some new ones coming up that are going to just blow people's minds. So I'm very excited for that. But yeah, we just launched a subscription not long ago, which is like one of my favorite things that we've done because it's a much more kind of affordable thing than mentorship is awesome. It's I think it's affordable, but it's not like the just subscription if you want to learn on your own. So if you're like that, which I am to a degree sometimes too, then we have some options there. So soundfly.com I think would be the last thing I would leave folks with. Musically, I mean I've got a SoundCloud, stuff's out there. There's not a whole lot else I'm doing on. I might there's some Maria's records out there, Tiger Speak records. Those are all things I've been a part of. And very proud of both those bands. So people can check that stuff out if you want to hear some bass playing. It's a little weird at times. Check that out. But that's basically the gist, man.
Cool. Thanks so much. This was such a great combo.
Thanks, Mike. This was a blast. Seriously, I can't thank you enough for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. So that's it for episode number 6 of The Conscious Creative, and I really want to thank Carter for his time. Obviously he's very busy with his podcasts and with his mentorship programs and everything with Soundfly, so I really appreciate him taking the time to come on the pod and just chat. I think there's a lot of things we can learn from this conversation, and I think one of them is the level of dedication that he had to his craft as a bassist, which I think people sometimes underestimate the amount of time and effort it takes to get to a professional level, and I think Carter demonstrated that in this conversation. Also, the conversation about balance as artists is massively important, and I'm gonna dive into it a little bit on my vlogs as well. Is artists just taking care of themselves. Yes, work ethic is important. Yes, we have to be dedicated, and sometimes even dedicated to an unhealthy amount. But if you can pull away and go find that little thing that you like to do, I think it can be really big for you. So I think that's something to consider. Another thing that we didn't talk about specifically, but you can see in the way that Carter acts, is he has a sense of service and giving in the way that he moves through the music industry, through working for a nonprofit, mentoring, and the way that he approaches his podcast and the amount of community-oriented content that goes into the podcast, I think is really incredible, and I think that's something that we can learn from this conversation, is just giving a little bit more, and I think that's the main takeaways. And thank you for listening. Again, if you're interested in getting in on this contest, go to www.museworksaudio.com/contest-entry and enter for a chance to win free EP mixed and mastered at Museworks Audio. And other than that, thanks for listening, and check me out on socials at Museworks Audio, my YouTube channel, Museworks Audio, and thanks, and take care.